There's only four ways to grow your business. The first one is to gain new clients, acquire new clients, right? Simple. The second one is to retain existing clients. Number three, re-engage clients who used to buy but stopped buying. And then number four, I think the workhorse, the real workhorse for today is grow your existing customer base, which is upsell and cross-sell.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited today. We have a sales guru. We have the sales guru. We have Victor Antonio with us today. And Victor is a globally sought after sales trainer and consultant who is actually an engineer by background. Yes, he's an engineer by background, has his MBA, but he built a 20-year career as a top sales executive and became president of global sales and marketing for a $420 million company. As vice president of international sales in that Fortune 500, $3 billion in corporation at a time, Victor was selected by over 500 sales managers to join the President's Advisory Council for Excellence in Sales and Management. He shared stages with top leaders such as Paul Otellini of Intel, John May of FedEx, Kinko's Damon John of Shark Tanks, and John Maxwell. He's trained and consulted with companies internationally all over the world, including Europe, Asia, Saudi Arabia, Australia, Latin America, Middle East, United Arab Emirates, and South Africa. And he is the author of over 16 books related to sales and motivation. Like, this man has a college, okay? A college of books. So please join me in welcoming Victor Antonio to our platform. Hi, Victor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. That was quite the lengthy intro. I always tell people chop it down a bit. Nobody wants to hear the whole bio, but thank you for going through that. I appreciate that. And thank you.
Well, we're excited about this. You know, a lot of our entrepreneurs are scaling entrepreneurs. You know, the smallest ones are $1 million. They go up to, 50 million plus. And this is a conversation that is going to touch home for many people. You know, one of the things that I'm seeing in the market is that people are telling me that sales are lower, right? And that's affecting their profits, and they're having to adjust their habits that they've gained during COVID, where, money was just falling out of the government into everybody's hands, and hence inflation. And now they're wanting to get sales back up. And I'm so excited about this conversation today because you are the master at sales. And first of all, I want to talk, Victor, like, what are you seeing in the market? What are you seeing in terms of sales? What are the struggles? What are the challenges that scaling entrepreneurs are facing right now?
Yeah, that's a big question. Let me begin by first saying to the audience that I love entrepreneurs. I think, when I think about entrepreneurs, people who start their own business, that's where my respect goes, because you took a chance, you built the business, and I know it wasn't easy. So I just want to salute you, because it's not easy. And I feel your pain, especially as you're scaling. I get the opportunity. I'm really lucky. I came from corporate America and then moved into sales training consultancy. And it's interesting because I have I'll say the context, the perspective of growing a business, and then going out there and now being able to talk to different businesses, Susanne. What's really cool is I've talked from everybody to like window companies, residential contract sales, to SaaS companies, computer software companies, all the way to I always joke about this, the International Cemetery Cremation Funeral Association. So I know how to sell pre-need and post-need. And it's interesting to see the full spectrum of what's going on when I talk to different companies. And all the struggles are very similar. They vary in different degrees with each company. But you said something interesting that, during COVID, you said, some of the habits we developed were actually bad habits. We suffered from what I call like sales atrophy. In other words, like muscle atrophy. You didn't use the muscle, so therefore you don't have it when you need it. During COVID, as you pointed out, rightly so, it was like manna from heaven. Leads were coming in. It was just raining. For some people, it was large margins. And so all of a sudden, now that's drying up. As inflation kicks in over the last couple of years, and, people have a weird thing about talking about the word recession. I don't have a problem with recession, because somebody's always buying in a recession. So my mindset is, yeah, okay, there's a recession. I got it. That means I just have to adjust what I have to do. And I always refer to the economist Milton Friedman, who said a recession is good. I love people who always look at it, why it's good. It said recession is good because it squeezes out the excess in the market. What does that mean to me as a business owner? And I'm just starting out with mindset first to kind of frame this conversation. When there's a recession, other companies begin to cut back. They pull back on their quality, their service, and they begin to suffer. And that's a perfect time to start taking market share and start taking business away from other companies. So if your company has been trying to get into a certain customer, like an incumbent, trying to kick the incumbent out, now's a perfect time to do that. So that's one way of reframing what's going on in the market today. I don't know if it's officially a recession. You got to have three quarters of negative GDP to have a recession. I got a feeling they're going to tell us later on that we were in a recession. So I really believe that we're in one now. And people, when I say that to people, they're like, well, that's so negative, Victor. I said, no, if I accept that as fact, because I think it is, now I have to chart my course according to that map. And by the way, and if it isn't a recession, I'm still going to win. But if it is a recession, how do we begin to chart course? A lot of companies are struggling with finding new customer, new leads. What you're starting to see, and again, the question you asked is a big question because it depends on where you want to attack this multi-headed hydra. One of the problems we're seeing is that a lot of outreach, let's talk about outreach programs. A lot of salespeople, and I'm being general here, but a lot of salespeople have depended on technology so much. For example, 5 years ago, they had 3 tools in the tech stack. Today, they have 10 tools in the tech stack. But this year after year, here's the insanity. Year after year, Susanne, studies keep showing that only a third of their time is actually, directed at sales activities. Well, how is it that we're dumping millions of dollars into giving salespeople more tools, but yet only a third of their time is on sales activities? I think a lot of salespeople are hiding behind the technology, if you know what I mean. And I think we have to get to a point where we got to get back to connecting with people. Like literally, and I know when people say that, I go, oh, yeah, that sounds very high level. I mean, literally, figure out who you're going after and then connecting with them instead of just sending them a bunch of emails. So lead generation is tough. Marketing costs are going up. And from a marketing perspective, we look at that head of the hydra. There's so much more noise today than there was pre-pandemic. Especially everybody's a video producer now, content generator, AI, things like, Dolly and Mid-Journey and some of these other technologies have made it more that people can just generate more content. So now there's more noise in the market. So it's hard to be that signal above the noise. So the marketing people are having an issue with that. The other part is consumers are getting smarter. And we don't usually look at that. We always want to improve sales. But we never look at the fact that the buyers are getting smarter. So we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we reducing the friction in getting them to buy? So when they come to our website, is there enough information there for them to make, I guess, the next decision, the next step? So a lot of stuff there. Lead generation on the sales part, marketing, a lot of noise. Buyers are smarter and they want less friction. And are you reducing the friction? Those would be the 3 pillars I would put out there to consider.
I love that. I love that. And it's very interesting too. I mean, like even the technology that worked, during COVID doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And the fact that you said that salespeople are spending 3 hours per day on sales
Yeah.
activity. Now, these are people that we were hiring specifically to do sales, right?
Right.
And they're only spending 3 hours a day
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
I think, the when they looked at the data, they said a lot of it is administrative tasks, right? Different administrative tasks, doing research on a company before I do some outreach, maybe writing an email before I do the outreach. But here's the problem, though, is that's why we gave you more technology. So you can have research done almost immediately, right? Go into your CRM, has a plugin, it can pull in the customer profile, the ideal client profile, whatever history of the profile. All that stuff should be there. So we gave you tools to do that. In terms of writing an email, well, you have a lot of technology to do that. And so your point is well taken. I said, why isn't that part of the actual connecting with the client growing? Why does it stay flat at again, 1/3 of their time? And I don't get that, but the data keeps showing that. And I'm just looking at all the money being dumped into sales enablement. So something's happening. And I really believe is that a lot of people, I'm going to say it this way. This is going to offend somebody, but what the hell? I'm part of an older generation where I'm okay with, calling people on the phone and going to visit them. Right? And trying to figure out how do I get in the door just to go see face to face. Today's generation seems to be more comfortable with texting, messaging, and sending emails. And I'm not saying that's not part of the outreach program. It is, of course. But at the end of the day, when you're getting in your message, if you go to LinkedIn, Instagram, and all these different channels, I can't tell you how many messages I get that I can tell you they were generated by a computer. AI. And I'm like, okay, that's not real outreach. You know what I mean? That's almost like throwing stuff up against the wall and hoping that something sticks. There's no strategy behind it. What I would recommend if I can just pivot here, because I think this will be an interesting conversation. When I talk to companies, what they need is like, okay, Victor, how do I grow my business? And I always begin with, well, let's focus, right? And to which they say, what do we focus on? I say, great question. I said, there's only 4 ways to grow your business. That's it. And so if you can imagine a quadrant, right? There's only 4 ways to grow your business. The first one is to gain new clients, acquire new clients, right? Simple. The second one is to retain existing clients. Number 3, re-engage clients who used to buy but stopped buying. And then number 4, I think the workhorse, the real workhorse for today is grow your existing customer base, which is upsell and cross-sell. So let's go through that real quick, Suzanne, because this is important. Acquisition, gain new clients. Go out and get new clients, right? Hold on to the existing ones, retain those, re-engage those that used to buy but didn't buy, and then again, upsell, cross-sell existing customers. Now, what if you and I, Suzanne, have a company, we sat around the table and we said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We can't focus on all 4 strategies. You just can't. So what we're going to do is month 1, let's focus on how we can improve lead acquisition, gaining new clients, and let's figure that strategy out. Now, here's why I recommend focusing in on one only. It's like when you buy a car. I always use this analogy. When you buy a car, the next day you get on the highway, you start seeing that car, the one you just bought. If you bought a Volvo, you start seeing Volvos. Now, did everybody buy a Volvo the night before and is now driving it? No, they were always there. But because you bought a Volvo, your brain has this selective perception now, and it sees Volvos. So all of a sudden, if I say to myself, okay, this month, and it could be this quarter, but let's just say this month is all about lead generation, different strategies we need, and I have my whole team now focused. That's all we're talking about, different ways to figure out how do we get more people into the actual funnel, right? And then close them. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing things you didn't see before because you're so hyper-focused on that. Month number 2 said, all right, now let's focus on retention strategies. What do we need to start doing that we're not doing? You go through that process. Month 3, you look at re-engagement. Month 4, you look at how do we upsell and cross-sell. And you repeat that cycle 3 times a year. And what I love about that strategy, first of all, it's simple to understand. There really is only 4 ways to grow your business. Somebody did throw in a 5th one. What if I do mergers and acquisition? All right, that's a good point. But let's stick with the basic 4. And this gives people a roadmap moving forward, because part of the anxiety we feel today is that we don't feel like, anxiety is all about indecision. I mean, they're like interlinked. If I don't make decisions, I feel this anxiety because I don't know whether to go left or right. And as soon as I say, okay, we got a plan, we're going this way. For this month, we're going this way. This is what we're focused in on. All of a sudden, everybody lines up and gets it. Anxiety goes down. We know what we're doing. We know what we're going to try to do. And let's measure that success.
I love it. So almost
No.
like it's an all-inclusive sales program and
Yeah.
it's 4 parts, but you're cycling it throughout the year. So if you
Yes.
catch one that's maybe not in that phase, ready to buy,
Mhm.
by that
Mhm.
next time you repeat the cycle throughout the
Mhm.
year, they're ready to go and you're
Yep.
keeping that relationship going. And so it's really about having focus initiatives and
I love it.
being able
Yep.
to do that. Now, Victor, can you repeat those different cycles for like what is month 1 again? Just so our
Month 1
audience can
is,
retain
no, that's
this.
okay. Month 1 is, by the way, if you want a simple acronym, GRGR. Okay, so we could just do GRGR. The first quadrant is gain new clients, right? Next one is retain. By the way, one study showed that if you can improve retention by 5%, you can increase your profit margins by like 80 to 90%. Because again, cost of sales is not existent. The third one is, I'll just give you the other G, is grow, which means go back to your existing customers, see if you can upsell them or cross-sell them. I wrote a book called Mastering the Upsell, and in there I highlight a study that said if you just focused in only on upselling, that's it, upselling and cross-selling your existing customer base, you can increase your revenues by up to 30%. Now, but profitability also increases because you already have that client. They're a captured client, so to speak. Cost of sales and sales cycles are very short. So all of a sudden, you're going to sell more and be more profitable. So that's the third one, grow. And then there's last one is re-engage. Go out and talk to customers that stop buying. And then again, hit them again in 4 months and keep cycling that through. So again, that's kind of a way of looking at it. But what I love about, let's take the gain new clients, right? Let's say I'm looking at gain. And then, are you familiar with the Blue Ocean strategy? It came
Yeah,
out
I
years
am.
ago. Okay. So Blue Ocean strategy, and I adapted a little bit. They said, okay, figure out what you're going to focus in on. The blue ocean, right, where nobody else is at. I took one of their maps and I kind of changed it a little bit. I said, okay, if I'm looking to gain, then I'm going to ask myself four questions. I call this the 4x4. Four ways to grow your business. So I'll focus in on one, right? Gain new clients. And then I ask myself four questions within that gain quadrant. And that is, on the positive side, what do I need to start doing that I haven't been doing to gain new clients? What if the second question is, again, on the positive side, is what can I do more of? It seems to be working. Let's do more of that to gain new clients. On the negative side, say, what do I need to stop doing to gain new clients that's just not working? Just simply what do I need to just stop doing? And then the second part of that on the negative side is what's not working so well, but I don't want to stop. I just want to reduce my investment, do less of it. So the memory tool there is start, stop, more, less. Start, stop, more, less. And you ask yourself those four questions. What do I need to start doing? What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to do more of? What should I do less of, but not stop?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
What a great acronym. You guys might have to pull over on the road and pull
Yeah.
out a notebook today because this is some really good stuff. So, or definitely do a replay on this.
Yeah.
We're getting a really good education on this in terms of growing our business, and I like it too because one of the things that I see from having worked with salespeople is they get bored. They get
Yeah.
this monotonous of like making 50 phone calls in an hour.
Mhm.
And having their throat hurt. It gets old after a while, but having a new initiative every single month
Yeah. Yeah. Kind
will
of change
really
that
keep
thing.
them more engaged. Exactly.
Yeah.
And not only that, but just as a customer being called, like, there's nothing like being reminded, oh yeah, I haven't bought from you in a while. And oh yeah, I
Yes.
did like you and I did have
Yeah.
a good experience. And
Yeah.
oh, you remember me. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, I can put in an order. Or I have a
Right.
friend that needs this too. It's things top of
Yes.
mind, right? There's nothing like, I think right now they say loneliness is an epidemic in America. And
Mhm.
I hate to say this, but sometimes when a salesperson call, hey friend.
Yeah, you got issues. If you're loving when a salesperson calls in, you got bigger issues, and that's so funny. But it's funny. I was on this podcast yesterday, great podcast, The Rise of the Entrepreneur, and it was interesting because the gentleman asked me because he has a call center, and he says, "Well, Victor, how do we motivate people, and then how do we keep them motivated?" And I said, "Well, it all depends on what you measure." And this is always an important topic, and it's not covered often enough. I go, how do you measure their performance? And he says, well, the number of calls they make. And I was like, that's the wrong metric, right? Because if you just say, okay, your job is to make 50 calls, what do you think the salesperson is going to do? Make 50 calls. I'm not saying they have to be quality calls, right? I'm just going to make 50 calls. I said, you got to go push it further into the actual, I'll say, sales cycle on this. It says, I don't want to know how many calls you make. I want to know how many meetings you set up for the day. Because I know if we can set up 10 meetings, we can close, let's say, 30% of those, 3 out of 10. That's all I'm measuring. And I was telling him, I said, I don't want to measure number of calls. I want to measure number of meetings that were set. And I gave him the extreme example. You can make your 100 calls. His was, I think, was 80 calls per day, 80 calls per day, and get to 10. But you know what? If there's a guy who can make 10 calls and get 10 meetings, I'm okay with that too. It doesn't matter. And I said, let's measure that. I said, so be careful what you measure, because sometimes if you measure the wrong thing, it creates the wrong behavior. Just thought
Definitely,
that.
definitely. It's the
Yeah.
results because I mean, if you're
Right.
there, that's for just the hours, right? And
Yeah.
you're being paid per
Yeah.
hour, it's like a relief if nobody answers the phone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we that's not the results that we're paying for, right? We're paying
Right.
for meetings set and then
Yeah.
ultimately number of closes that occur. So
Yeah. Can
that's
I
the more
layer
important
something on
metric.
top of that? I don't mean to interrupt, but
Sure.
I don't want to forget this thought. I have ADHD bad, Suzanne, so sometimes you have to forgive me. Uh, One of the things we laid on top of that was compensation plans and how we compensate salespeople. And I think it's an important topic because how you compensate people, really drives, sales behavior. And I think we don't talk about that enough because we have this, I don't know, it's almost like a negative connotation. Well, Victor, it's not all about the money. Well, if you're in sales, it is. And I'm talking about ethical money, real like value for value money. And I always define that as this. True capitalism to me is if I provide value, a product or service that's going to help your business grow, then I expect value in return, which is payment, right? That's value for value. It's an ethical value for value exchange. And I said, people have bills to pay. these salespeople have bills to pay. And so we have to make sure that their compensation plan is set up in such a way that we remove the anxiety off the table, but not take away the urgency, if you know what I mean. It's always finding that right, balance. And we talk about how you can use money to incentivize behavior with salespeople in a very positive way. So I just thought I'd throw that in because I think when you measure the behaviors, right? How many meetings have you set up? What's your meeting to close rate? That's one way of looking at it. But also we have to have the other side also filled in, so to speak, which is how are we compensating these folks to make sure they're motivated for the efforts they're putting in?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm curious, Victor, the psychology of hiring a
Mhm.
salesperson. Well, first of all, what is the ideal candidate for a good salesperson?
Mhm.
And after that, where do you find them?
That's a big question. I don't have the I'll give you my take on it, but I think the most methodical answer that I found out there, I forgot the gentleman's name. He was co-founder of HubSpot. He wrote a book called, I think, it's Sales Acceleration Formula. Sales Acceleration Formula. It is the best book on recruiting because of what he talks about and the detail he gets into in terms of how do you begin to look for the right characteristics for the right salesperson. How do you score them during interview process, and then what types of processes do you have, in terms of how many cycles of interviews and types of questions, and how do you work with other colleagues to make sure when we're interviewing somebody we're all on the same page. And I think it's called the Sales Acceleration Formula. And so I recommend, if you're looking to hire people, you want more of a systemized approach, that would be the book. That said, when I look at salespeople, I'm always like, obviously, you want some industry experience, right? But that's always a dangerous piece because sometimes they have the industry experience, but they don't have the will. And you always talk about will and skill, right? I'd rather hire for will. Like, they're hungry, they want to sell, they want to be successful. And when I look at salespeople today, I always, I'll give you this story. When I was made vice president of sales for Latin America, the company, that's the $3 billion company, and their sales had never exceeded 14.1 million. So I was hired as VP, and I was the youngest vice president in this company. And so there was a lot of pressure to perform. And I remember that in that process of growing the business, I'll run to the end real quick. The end is I grew it to $98 million in annual revenue in 2.5 years, 14 and 98. And I did several things. The first one is my boss taught me very quickly, we don't sell on price, we sell on value. Taught me that very quickly. On average, our products were like 30% higher than our competitors. So we had to sell on value. And just a footnote, some people say, does that mean you never discount? We discount with purpose. You know what I mean? It's part of a long-term strategy. For example, if there's key accounts we're trying to get, and I know if I get that key account, I'll get this, 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 and this. It was planned out. So we always discounted with purpose, and we had to defend our position in front of our managers, by the way, when we discounted. But my boss taught me you sell on value. And we learned to sell on value. Again, we learned value messaging. And so we were able to grow the business. What was interesting is that some people were able to adapt to the new way of selling, and some people just refused to adapt. And I guess the direct way of saying it, I fired them, right? Because sometimes we're quick to hire, slow to fire, right? And I've learned that if I have to worry more about my salesperson, about their career than they do, then there's something wrong. And so I wound up, in growing that business, I think I wound up buying like a third of my sales force. And I always ask myself this question: is it good clay or bad clay? Good clay you could mold, bad clay refuses to change, right? And so I looked for good clay and I molded the good clay and I got rid of the bad clay. Now, I always say there's a caveat to that, a small one. I had one salesperson who just basically, flipped the bird at me and says, I'm not doing it your way, Victor. I'm doing it my way. And to which I said, okay, as long as I get my number every quarter, you can do whatever you want. Belligerent, probably one of the worst personalities I've ever had. Customers loved him, right? Because he was different with the customers. He was all sweet. I got the vinegar, they got the honey, so to speak. But he had his own way of selling and he didn't want to change. And every quarter he kept delivering. But after the first year, he was always in the top three. After the first year, moving into the second year, something else started to happen. He started to fall in the ranking. And all of a sudden, he wasn't in the top three. He stayed in the top 10. And it was really interesting. By the third year, he started adjusting his strategy and he came around slowly. So I always tell people that even if you have belligerent salespeople, if they're delivering and they're taking care of the customer, even though they're, I guess, bad clay, so to speak, don't get rid of them. Just find a way to work with them. One more example for if you have a bad salesperson out there, a tough salesperson, I should say. I had one salesperson who just sold like a demon, just a great salesperson. But I was like, dude, you got to get the data into the CRM, because you're setting a bad example here. You're the top seller. Everybody's watching you. You're not entering the data. And he would say, yeah, yeah. And he would do it for a month and then he'd stop all over again. So we'd have the conversation again. Now, I often ask people, okay, so what do you do in that situation? You need the data. The salesman's killing it, but you need the data. What do you do? The answer to me was simple. I hired him an assistant to input the data. The assistant cost me like $40,000 a year at the time, right? But I knew if he had more time not to enter data and actually work on selling, division of labor. And what happened was initially he resisted, but then after a while he loved it and he was able to sell more and we were both happy. So find ways to keep people like that also.
I love that. Realize that we can't be stringent about our process.
Mm.
Yes, it's important
Okay.
to be, our
Yeah.
processes are important, but
Right.
sometimes we may not have the right way.
Right.
And being able to work with other people is and meet their needs and see how they can perform best is very
Yeah.
important as a leader. So very good point
Yeah.
with that,
You almost
Victor.
have to
And so
humble
many chief
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I love that, something fire quickly, right?
Yeah.
If they're really not the
Mhm.
right person or not getting the
Mm.
results, then you know where this is heading. We might as well get there
Right.
faster.
As long as you can say to yourself, I've done everything possible. Like before I fired anyone, I was always like, do you have the tools you need? In fact, let me take a step back. I said, are you happy with the compensation arrangement? Because it's fair market value. And they go, yeah, good. Okay, check. Okay, next. Training. Do you need any training? What do we need to train you on? Where do I need to send you? What do we need to do? Right. And so once they said, no, no, I'm good. Okay, you're good. Do you need me or anybody else to go with you to kind of look at what you're doing, analyze your sales process, make sure you're doing this right, that whole thing. And then so we would always like make sure the salesperson had everything. They would have all the support. Is there anything you need? And as soon as I said, no, I got everything I need, and they still couldn't sell or perform, that's when you know it's probably time to find somebody else. And again, I think it's a win-win for both. That person isn't a fit, right? And for us as a company, it's not so much about getting rid of them as I don't want that contagion, so to speak, in the organization. When I say that, people get offended, and I don't mean that in a negative way, is that if somebody's not performing, other people see that. They're not doing the job, other people see that. And they say, well, why did Victor let him get away with it? Well, why should I do it if he's not doing it? And I think that's always something nobody wants to talk about that. But I truly believe that it could be something that's really insidious if you just let it fester.
I'm starting to wonder that all those people start wanting an assistant too, like so and so got an assistant. Can I get one too?
By the
Um,
way, by the way, I had that question actually. He says, why did he get an assistant? I said, do you want one? They would go, well, yeah, I would love one. I said, okay, hit this number consistently and it's all yours. And you know what happened? They couldn't hit the number because it was a big number. He was bringing in big numbers. And I was like, and then so I made an announcement during our quarterly meetings. I said, if anybody wants an assistant like him, and I bring it up so everybody knows it's out in the open, I'd be more than happy to get you one. I said, but you got to hit this level of revenue consistently. So anybody wants to talk to me about getting an assistant and hitting this revenue up in their quota, let me know. I'm open. Nobody came into the office. Yeah, that was
I
interesting.
guess
So
I guess he was really awesome then. He deserved an
he was
assistant.
really good. He was really good. Like I said, after a while, other people started really pushing past him, but he still he raised the bar so high, everybody else had to be better. And I love that effect that he had on the team. We talked about leadership. I want to kind of highlight something that is not talked about, and that's leadership styles and how they mesh with salespeople, which is why sometimes we have a hard time managing salespeople. And I have a different take on it. So if you can bear with me, Suzanne, it's an interesting
Sure.
take. And so in management, there's two theories, right? There's theory X and theory Y. Theory X is command and control. Theory Y is more of a delegation style. So, for example, a theory X manager is like, here's what I need you to do. Go left, go right, go straight, then turn left, take 3 steps, the whole job, just do what I tell you to do. And they want to be in control of everything. Have you had a manager like that, Suzanne? Just
Probably
total
me,
control?
but um
You'll go, I don't want to talk about this, Victor. So I'm sure we've all had one of those managers that's very, command and control. And then there's the other manager who's more outcome based oriented. Like I don't care how you get there, just get there, right? And so two management styles. Now, by the way, we have a blend of both, but there's one dominant mode, right? So keep that in mind, two management styles. Now let's look at salespeople. I put them into two broad categories. I use the tortoise and the hare, right? Like the story, the Aesop's fable. The tortoise is slow and methodical, step by step, slow, methodical. They go at their own pace, right? The hare, the rabbit, well, this is just like, just, they just want to run, right? Now, here's what's interesting. If you're a Theory X manager, command and control, turtles love you because they love you to tell them what to do because that's how they roll. They love instructions. They love you to choreograph their sales moves. So they really love instructions and direction, which is why they keep coming back to the manager. Well, how would you do this? Do this, do this, do this. They love that. The problem comes in is when you have a Theory X manager who is trying to control a rabbit because the rabbit's like, leave me alone. Don't give me rules. That's what I had. I had a rabbit on my hand and he's like, don't control me. Let me go. And so flip it around also. If you're Theory Y, that means you're like outcome based. Rabbits love you because rabbits are like, no, you don't care how I get there. I just got to get there. Yes. Turtles keep coming back to you because they want instruction and you get irritated because you're like, why, just go do it because it works that way. Just you got trained, go do it. And I want to highlight that because what happens is too often we promote salespeople into management and they have conflicting styles. For example, a lot of rabbits get promoted because they're very good at what they do. The problem with putting a hare as a manager is that they're typically very Theory Y, outcome based. And sometimes new salespeople, especially when you're onboarding new salespeople, they need a lot of instructions because they're turtles. Maybe down the road they'll become hares. But I just want people to be aware of that we have management styles and we have two different selling styles. And sometimes they're conflicted, they're not aligned, which is why we're irritated with some of our salespeople sometimes as managers.
I love it. And
Yeah.
also, I love that the fact that you even brought that out that, there are two different styles. There's the command and control and there's the Theory Y.
Right.
And it's important as leaders to be able to flux, right?
Yeah.
And realize that, if I have a new person, they might need more hand holding. And
Yeah.
it's good to create a process and a structure so that person can follow it. But if I see someone that's proven, right, who's going to die if I try to cage them in a two-way process and they're performing, then I need to respect that.
That's right.
And step back. And so
do I have a rabbit or a turtle?
As a leader.
Yeah. Do I have a rabbit or a turtle? I don't know. I don't know what happens when you have a hybrid, though. What would you call that?
Well, we kind of all start out as a hybrid, right? When we're new, so. we're turtles, and then when we're like Victor, we're rabbits.
You're just like, you emerge from your shell, your chrysalis, so to speak. Yeah.
Very, very, very interesting there. Very, very good. You did say one thing interesting too a while back ago. You said a lot of interesting things. You said about it's good to hire people with industry experience.
Right.
And however, will before industry experience. First of all, let's talk about why the industry experience is so important. Like, what are the benefits of hiring someone in the industry? Because, a lot of times people will put out an ad on Indeed or Craigslist looking for a salesperson, and it's more of a random, I'll interview 20 people versus specifically honing into an industry and maybe recruiting from LinkedIn for a particular industry. Let's talk about industry versus and the benefits.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one because it's almost like if you look at the spectrum of selling, right, from simple to complex sale, the thing is what you want to hire more for expertise and industry experience, the more complex the sale is, because that's stuff you just can't learn overnight. And I always I have this formula for trust. I'm an engineer. It's always a formula. It's either quadrants or formulas with me. And to me, trust is this. I had to break down trust so I can understand it. The first part of trust is I take your point of view. I listen to you. I understand you. I feel your pain, right? I got it. The second part of the trust factor formula is I'm a subject matter expert. I know the industry. Not only do I understand your pain, I know what's happening in the industry. And the third part I always say is keep their best interests in mind. So when I'm talking to you, I'm always looking out for your best interest. So if I empathize with you, and then if I can educate you because I'm a subject matter expert, and then maybe empower you to make that decision based on what's best for you, to me, that right there is the trifecta of trust, right? Those three things. And so industry experience never goes away. Being a subject matter expert, dominating that domain, that vertical, understanding what's going on in the market, trends, who the competitors are, different types of products out there, how they compare. That's what clients want, because in today's market, what's happening is that clients, we've reached a level, Suzanne, of product parity or even service parity. By that I mean is almost all products look alike, almost all services really look alike. You can argue, yeah, there's going to be the 1% of the 1% that creates something so unique that nobody can copy. I got that. But aside from that, that exception to the rule, the majority of products or services are almost the same, and sometimes so non-discernible that even customers can't tell the difference. So now the customer is looking at three different product solutions, and they need somebody to help them sift through the pros and the cons. That's what they're looking for today. One of my favorite books out there is came out 11 years ago, 12 years ago now, I think, The Challenger Sale. Matt Dixon and Brent Adamson wrote this book called The Challenger Sale. I still think it is the best sales book written in the last decade, easy, right? And still valuable today because it talked about the types of salesperson, but most important, what customers want. And that is for you to control the conversation, which is controversial. Control the conversation means this. It's not, Machiavellian, do this, that whole thing. It's more like, let me ask you questions to kind of help you reveal what it is you really want. And so if I'm a subject matter expert, because I have industry experience, I can ask those questions, especially in a complex sale. So that's why as you move towards the end of the complexity spectrum, I think domain expertise, subject matter expert becomes that much more important. Again, if you move down the other side towards transactional sales, that's why I would look at hiring more for will in terms of, they're motivated, they're hungry, they want it, because then I can teach them. And I know that the ramp, the onboarding, training, speed, I call it speed to value. Speed to value from the time I hire you to the point time you're actually providing value for the company selling is shorter. And I would increase speed to value. So it's a complex answer, but again, if it's complex sale, I want domain expertise because that's hard to find. And by the way, these people I should highlight who've been around the industry for, let's say, 15, 20 years, they know the players, they know the movements, and they've been to every trade show probably. They have all these connections. So you're also hiring their database, so to speak, and all that connection with them. But again, as you move down towards more simple sales, again, I would say hire for will and then train on skill.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for that clarification there. Now, one of the things that I have seen, as someone who has had sales teams that have worked under me, and the accounting practice, is what I find on what I have found personally is salespeople don't like to generate leads. We've had appointment setters that work for them, but if they were responsible for both, it always seemed like when those Facebook ads performed well,
Yeah.
they had no problem following up and having conversations,
Sure.
but
Mhm.
generating leads
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
always to me one of the hardest things to get them motivated to do.
Yeah.
And of course you could find someone that was probably motivated, but I think that for me it was a rare bird. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? Have you seen that conundrum and
Yes.
how do you work past that?
Yes, I've seen that conundrum. Uh, it's funny how, again, I've been around long enough. I've seen the evolution of sales where there was back in the day, the account executive actually generated the leads and actually closed the deal also. It was only later that, the rise of the SDRs, the BDRs, whatever XDRs you want to put in there, came about. And all of a sudden they're generating the leads and the account executive just focuses on closing. So I came from the generation where you had to generate your own leads. Having said that, I think that my opinion on getting more leads is that, first of all, we've conditioned salespeople to wait for them, almost like the little bird that waits with its mouth open for mommy to come home and actually put some food down their throat, right? It's like we've done that to them. So we've trained them wrong because that's the way the model was set up, right? So now we're trying to untrain them to say, you got to do some of this yourself. And I'll give you, let's say the residential industry, like whether it's pest control, windows, roof, let's just say the residential, I think is a very fascinating, place to look at generating leads because that's a big issue today. A lot of these like the pool companies I work with as well, they were getting so many leads during the pandemic because everybody wanted a pool during the pandemic, right? That, yeah, I mean, their lead times were pushed out to 9 months to sometimes a year and a half. So they were just loving it, right? Now, guess what? They have to generate their own leads. Okay, so let's go there. That's the new reality, generate our own leads. When I talk to companies and I train them, I always ask them simple things like this. All right, show me your follow-up process. Blank look, right? Okay, show me your referral process. Blank look. I go, what do you mean by that? Well, what's the process? Like when do you ask for it? How do you ask for it? What do you say? What's the process? And 9 out of 10, if not better, don't have one. So let's think about this for a second, Suzanne. Let's really analyze this. Be self-critical here. If I don't have a process in place, I'm a new salesperson or even existing salesperson. If I'm a new salesperson, I don't know how to do it. If I'm an old salesperson, well, I've gotten into such bad habits that I never asked. So now you tell me to do it, but I haven't done that. Is there a process? No. And so the big problem usually is there is no process. And you may think that, what do you mean there's no process for asking for a referral? There really isn't in a lot of cases. And you would think this is kind of the easiest thing to do, right? To kind of figure out what is a referral process? Like, when do you ask for it? Right? Even in the upselling, I asked this question when I do the upselling, cross-selling training. I said, what's your process? Like, how do you purposely do it? Right? And again, I get these looks like, what do you mean, Victor? We just ask for, we just introduce other products. Yeah, but how do you do it? When do you do it? And what's the process flow? And so the short answer to the question is people feel an anxiety because they don't know how to do it, because there is no process. What holds us back, remember I said, the anxiety comes from indecision. I don't know how to do it. And in a lot of companies, even those listening to us now or watching us, they're probably asking themselves, do I have a referral process? Like, when do I ask for it? And to motivate you, I was doing I won't mention the company's name, but it was a residential service company. And we were doing this Q&A. And I was talking to one franchisee. She had been with the company, with a franchise for 10 years, right? And she said something really interesting. She said, Victor, last year, I think 36% of our sales came from referrals, right? 36% came from referrals. And I said, well, what's your close rate on those referrals? She said, it's like 62%. And I said, how are you doing this year? This part blew me away. She says, well, this year, she goes, it's like 54% of our business comes from referrals. And then she said our close rate is around 82%, which totally makes sense, right? I mean, let's just stop there and mine this pot of gold. Because what she did, by the way, I asked her the follow-up question. I can only imagine your cost of sales has gone down. Your advertising costs have gone down. She says yes, 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 and yes. And then we talked about her process. So she does have a process for it when she asks for it, right? And usually it's when the service is complete, right? And she has a script. And I thought the script was really interesting. And this is the part I remember from her script. She goes, Mr. Customer, after they're satisfied, we get to know each other. She goes, one way that I grow my business is when customers like you provide a referral. And I stopped her right there. I said, what's clever about what you just said, you told the customer one way that I grow my business. She didn't say our business. She said my business. And studies have shown that personalizes it, right? Because now you're helping me. And she says, when I use that script, all of a sudden, I get more referrals. And she had it all timed. Like, she knew that when the job was done, we do a final inspection, a Q&A inspection. In that Q&A inspection, she shows up, but also the technician or whoever worked on the project shows up as well. And the consumer's actually surprised. And then they have a discussion about all the wonderful things and how things are going. Do we need to do anything else? And then that's when they ask for it. So they always have that special meeting, to make sure everything's okay. And then she has a script. And then I think she had one or two ways where you could actually send in the referral or she'll grab it right there. But think about the fact that now more than 50% of her business is now referrals. There's no cost of marketing there almost. So they have a process. My answer to your question is, if we give people a process, it reduces anxiety. They know when they're going to do it. They know how they're going to do it. They know what to say, how to say it, and then what to ask for. That's where we need to reduce the anxiety.
I love that. And also the timing too. The timing
Timing's
was at
important.
the close when things were really at its
Yeah.
peak,
By the way,
they
before I forget, the pool company, this I can share, because almost all of them do this. I think it's clever. They're like insurance people. Insurance people say, it's your policy birthday. Let's sit down and look at your policy. Pool people, what they do is when the pool, they give the pool a birthday. In other words, so when they open the pool, okay, we're officially done. We're opening the pool, and they'll ask the person, "When are you gonna? So when are you gonna, like open the pool, make it available?" She goes, "Well, tomorrow." Okay, that's what we're gonna call your pool's birthday. They actually come over and deliver a basket with towel, any kind of stuff that you need a pool, and they call that the birthday. Now, well, here's what's interesting. Obviously, at the birthday, they might talk about referrals or maybe some upgrades, what they could do next, because the person's reached the point where they're now, okay, pool's done. Okay, let's celebrate. Let's enjoy it. And then they maybe even pepper in something like, well, next time, one of the things we should add to your pool that will really make it done is this. And they'll leave it at that. And they know that the next pool birthday, they go back and visit with a new basket of stuff. And there's always an
Oh,
excuse to go
wow.
back. There's always an excuse to go back. This is what we're missing. One of the things we're missing today, you got to find ways to go back for whatever reason. And I think people don't understand this. Anytime I can go back physically and touch a customer, I'm pulling that customer in. I'm capturing that customer with every personal touch. I mean, this is a touch, phone, email, I got it. But every personal touch pulls the person in closer, making them less likely to go somewhere else, make them more likely to want to buy more.
I love that. I love that. Find those points of celebrations to go back
Yeah.
to. I think
Yeah.
that's a really that's just gold there. Now, Victor, I can talk with you all day, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that my folks that are listening can listen to you all day. This is just such great, juicy information. But don't worry, guys, I'm going to give you a way to contact Victor and reach out to him to learn more, to work with him and build your sales team. But before I do that, before we close, I love asking our guests,
Mm.
if you could leave us with one piece of advice, it could be personal or business. What would
Mm.
that advice be?
My standard is never aim for perfection, aim for success. And here's what I mean by that. When you're thinking of doing something new, don't wait for it to be perfect. This is why I will never be a NASA scientist or rocket scientist, because once I'm at 80%, it's good enough. You know what I mean? I don't wait for perfection. I like to just launch and then iterate. So I like to launch something. And then I already program my brain to say, and we're going to probably have to iterate, but then we'll let the market tell us what we have to iterate on. Too often, ideas never get launched. Someone said one time, and I forgot how they put it, that your desk is often the graveyard of great ideas because they never get off your desk. And so if you have an idea right now, something you're thinking of doing, maybe it's your new marketing campaign, right? Maybe it's a new outreach program, just launch it. And then the market will tell you if you need to make the proper adjustments. Never aim for perfection, aim for success.
I love it. I love it. Never aim for perfection, just aim for success. I love
Yes,
it. That's and it's true because so many of us get stuck in analysis paralysis,
we
so
are.
especially those that are in technical fields, accounting, math, um,
Yes,
that analysis paralysis is real.
it
It
is
is real.
real.
Like you have to get therapy for that sometimes just to get moving. It's so crippling, right?
Love it.
Um, Now, Victor, what's the best way for our audience to learn more, to reach out to you, to work with you? What's the best way to contact you?
If you just go to victorantonio.com, I think if you just type in the search engines Victor Antonio, you'll find me. But victorantonio.com, there, I guess I'm on the website. I got some free books that people can download. And then also there's the Sales Velocity Academy. Take a look at that if you want some more training. But yeah, victorantonio.com.
I love that. And free books, guys, make sure you go to
Yeah.
victorantonio.com.
Mm.
And his name is spelled just that way, but I am going to put his contact information in our show notes. So if you guys are driving, don't worry about pulling over. When you
Mm.
get to a safe place, you'll be able to click on that link in order to reach Victor. So Victor,
Yes.
thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wealth of knowledge to our 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs today.
Suzanne, thank you for having me. Go entrepreneurs. Go.